So there's something else that I wanted to talk to you about, and it's this expansion thing that's been kind of happening here between the Big Ten and the SEC, and they seem to be running the show. And neither one of us, as we've talked about in the past, are in favor of what they're trying to do.
Right.
But it seems like it's inevitable to happen. And it seems like they're passing around either a 14 or a 16 team expansion. Which of those two would you prefer? Like, both of us think it's bad, but which is the lesser evil in your mind?
You said between the 14 and 16?
Between the 14 and 16.
I think the 16 is the one lesser evil.
Okay, why?
When I looked at some of the teams that were ranked around there this season, such as South Carolina, I think those teams, if you're telling me that some of these other teams are going to get into the 14, knowing that just because you're ranked higher, that doesn't mean you're better than the other team. I'm okay with it. Just don't let it get to 20.
That's probably where they're going. But, I pulled up here some of the so on social media, they've been going back to see, the Big Ten and the SEC proposed model would be 4 from the Big Ten, 4 from the SEC, and then two from the other conferences, and then 1 of the group of 5. If they were going to do change it into a different model. If they do that, the 2022 season, Purdue would have made the college football playoff. Like, Purdue.
Yeah.
I think we need to I think the Big Ten needs to reconsider. I think the other conferences need to make sure that this is something that is pushed back upon, that doesn't really happen, because if the Big Ten and the SEC aren't careful, they're just going to water down their own product that they're trying to make better. And I understand it. Like, I understand their motivations. Like, obviously, more teams in the college football playoff means more revenue for them that they can share around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's obviously what this all boils down to, is just money. But I don't personally want to see a matchup of Purdue and Alabama where Alabama roasts them, by 40 in a first-round playoff game. That does not interest me as a college football fan. And I don't think it interests a lot of college football fans. So, but, to kind of answer my own question, I would actually prefer the 14-team model.
Mm-hmm.
And that's strictly because you keep it a little bit more exclusive, and you prevent a little bit of what I just said. You prevent a little bit more of that watered down product. I mean, like in the 14-team model, like let's say that would have happened this year. If you just, go straight off the rankings, Miami, you get in, you get a chance, and then Ole Miss, we'll see what happens with you. So those are, if you're going to have to expand the playoff, that's going to be the limit that, that's where I guess I draw the line, would be 14 teams as opposed to 16, even though it'll probably end up being 16 anyway.
So, here, I'll just put it this way. I'm still somewhat of a purist of this game, right?
Yeah.
I'm vehemently against automatic bids outside of winning your own conference. I think that ruins the sport, and also just simply because of this. Let's say the SEC and the Big Ten each get 4 teams. And let's say it's a 14 team, right? You're talking over 50% of the playoff being from 2 conferences. Mind you, let's say the 4th place team of the Big Ten is 9-3, and there's a team that's 10-2. Well, I mean, I don't understand why that 4th place team gets an automatic bid. I would say the same thing for Ohio State this season. If they were the 4th team, and mind you, we're the 4th team in the Big Ten this season because we lost a game we should have never lost, and the 2 of the teams ahead of us we beat.
Yeah.
But I will sit here and tell you, Ohio State should not have an automatic bid simply because you are in the Big Ten. Everyone, there's an acronym for that in today's world. Everybody, there's literally an acronym for that in today's world. So
and you talk about how in that scenario how Big Ten and the SEC would have would have 50% of the bracket. This year was actually both conferences was over 50% of the bracket because Big Ten got 4, SEC got 3. I think the way they did it was correct. Like I don't have qualms with who they chose. I think that was probably the correct order. But to your point, like if there's a year where some of the Big Ten just absolutely stinks, then that's going to be a problem or the SEC, quite frankly, like either conference. That's going to be a problem for me when there are going to be other teams from other conferences that deserve it. Yeah. And again, we're you and I are talking from a purely college football fan standpoint, and that's unfortunately who these conferences and power brokers in college football seem to listen to the least. They don't seem to care. They seem to care only about what lines their checkbook, how much money they can bring in, and that's that.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about this. I mean, so if you win the ACC, and also I want to say this. I also want to say this. With this being known now, what's being done to the ACC and the Big 12, I think is horrendous.
Yep.
I think those two conferences are prominent conferences in college football. There's not a Big 2. There's there's Power 4 conference. There's Power 4. And I think especially in the ACC, I think there's a lot of valuable programs there. And I'm not just talking about Miami. I'm not just talking about Clemson. Not just Florida State. I think Virginia Tech is important to college football. I think programs like Syracuse are important to college football. I think programs like Virginia are important to college football. You go down to the Big 12. People like to hate them, but we see what's going on with this resurgence of Colorado football. You got Iowa State down there, who over the last 10 years, Iowa State has had their ups and downs. But man, when they're up, and it's fun to watch them and see it as a college football purist and fan. You still got other. Who's else down there? Cincinnati's down there now.
Big 12.
Yeah. I don't like what's happening to them. And then my next question is like, okay, well, does the winner of the ACC and the Big 12 get that bye that the SEC and the Big 12 Big 10 do? Yeah. So where are these other Big 10 schools, SEC schools being ranked?
I don't know. And I mean, I know I mentioned, Purdue in the 2022 season. Just so everyone knows, like they finished that season. They ended up playing the Big Ten championship that year because they still had divisions and it was the Big Ten West. Mm-hmm. They finished their season, including their bowl game after that, 8-6. They lost 6 games. That would be a team that would be in the college football playoff. Subtract their bowl game, they would have been 8-5 going into the college football playoff. Like there's no business with a team being that bad being the college football playoff. I don't care if it's from the Big Ten. I like the Big Ten. Obviously, Ohio State plays in the Big Ten. But that is just, honestly, that's just pissing on college football. Like, college football fans, like, you're going to make them sit through a Purdue when they've got 5 losses in the college football playoff. Like, give me a break.
What is we're going to give an automatic bid for a 14th place team?
Yeah. I mean,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. I get why it's happening. The money, I truly get it. Listen, man, I'm a capitalist. I'm okay with it, but don't do it to the detriment of the sport.
Agreed. Although, had it been around in the 2019 season, when Ohio State was obviously really good, it would have been interesting to see because Ohio State and Penn State would have made it, and then Wisconsin and Minnesota would have been the other 2 teams.
What season was that?
That was 2019. That was PJ Fleck's first year when Minnesota won 11 games.
Yeah.
That would have been kind of interesting to see. But again, most years, and I think this is what the Big Ten is going to, and the SEC are going to say, and they're going to count on, be like, look, both of our conferences are so big now with so many premier teams that we're not going to have any stinkers. Like the 4 teams that we put in, they're going to be good.
Yeah.
Because now we've got Oregon, USC, Washington, UC, like all these teams added in the SEC. Now we've got Texas and Oklahoma, 2 blue blood programs. So we're not going to stink. And because our conferences are so big, our conferences are so much better than everyone else's. So we deserve those bids. And I don't necessarily agree with that. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with that as well. But that's just kind of the system that they've set up for themselves to make this happen. And again, and we talked about this last week. I would actually prefer, if they're going to change anything, change the seeding, that we had last year. Like, there's no reason Boise State should be getting a bye. Arizona State, maybe, but certainly not Boise State. So I think there are other issues they could be fixing within the playoff as opposed to trying to expand the format already and, kind of rig it for themselves.
I mean, and maybe you can give some clarity on this. Maybe you know, or maybe you don't. But say if you got your, I mean, what this season 4? How many Big Ten teams made it this year?
This year it was 4. It was Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and IU.
Yeah. What
SEC,
happened?
It was Bama. I'm sorry, it was not Bama. It was Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas.
So what happens? I mean, if you have 4 making the top 12, I mean, I would highly doubt some way a team would be a 5th place team would be that highly ranked in a conference. No. But the only reason I ask is because of this. If you look at some of the current Big Ten schedules, I think we all assume Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State are going to have really good seasons, right? Now let's say look, man, there's a chance that Michigan has a really good season too. And then if you look at someone like Illinois, where their schedule is screaming 11-1, 10-2.
Illinois is an interesting case because their schedule, it's not a complete cakewalk like Michigan's is next year, at least in the Big Ten portion of it. But it's still pretty easy. Like their big non-con game is Duke. I wouldn't say that's too tough. IU is going to be much worse this year. They play them, and they get at IU. They do have to play Ohio State. They do have to play at Washington, but they get USC at home. They got to go at Wisconsin as well, though. So I still think they could lose, 3 or 4 games depending on how everything shakes out.
I mean, they bring back, I think, 74% of their.
That's where I was going to go. Is they bring back a ton of guys, like a ton of guys.
The quarterback.
So I think it's definitely possible that they can do something like that.
Yeah.
And are you trying to say there's a chance the Big Ten gets 5 teams in the playoff next year? Because I'm not going to go there.
I know for a fact. Well, I don't know what Penn State's going to look like next year. At least quarterback wise.
Penn State's still going to be really good.
Yeah, I think next year. I know. I'm going to say that next year I know for a fact that Ohio State, Michigan, and Oregon are making it.
I see. I would say for a fact. I would say Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. I don't know for a fact that Michigan's going to get there, even though their schedule's so easy. Just because.
Are you talking about this upcoming season?
Yes, this upcoming season.
Okay, I thought we were talking about during a 14-team. Okay.
I mean, even in a 14-team playoff, I think they'll be
really good.
I would still guarantee Penn State over Michigan in any format next year. Next
season. Okay, I'm thinking about 27 when the 14 team will come in. But if you're talking about next season,
yeah, I think it's pretty hard to project that far.
Yeah, it's Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State. It is, and I mean, again, I have Michigan at 9-3 right now. We'll see how that works out. Illinois, I had them at 10-2 right now.
I do think there's a chance that there's 4 Big Ten teams in again next year. My most likely, subjects are Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, and Michigan, just because they don't. I mean, Ohio State has to play both Penn State and Michigan, but Oregon avoids both Ohio State and Michigan. Like, there's all three. Honestly, of any team, Ohio State's got the toughest schedule because they got to play Texas too.
Yeah.
So, Michigan's schedule is a cakewalk, but we don't know what they're going to do at the quarterback position, and that's the big thing for me. And I know, I know we mentioned this last week with the Collins show. I don't know when the sanctions are going to come, the actual penalties. There could be some stuff that happens, this season that stuff could come down this summer. We just don't know the timeline on that, and that could derail their season too.
Most definitely.